good evening. Thank you very much for joining us here on Times Now. This is News Hour Agenda and I'm Hina Gambhir. Viewers, the United States of America has imposed an immediate freeze on student visa interviews. The US government is now set to vet your social media profiles. Yes, that's right. Is your digital profile now going to be your passport for the United States of America? And who will this really impact? Top Harvard professor Lawrence Tribe joins us on the News Hour Agenda to decode the visa freeze. And at 10:30, we talk about how Congress MP Shashi Tharoor has now fallen prey to leaders of his own party. It is Congress versus Congress now. Tharoor highlights how India gave Pakistan a hammer blow. But back in India, Congress leaders are calling him a super BJP spokesperson. Have Desh Bhakts angered Parivar Bhakts? That's going to be debate number 2 on the News Hour Agenda this evening. And viewers, today we start with a note of caution. If you have dreams of studying in Donald Trump's America, then think not once but twice before you post anything on your social media account. Because that is the newest criteria that's going to decide whether you will get the US visa or not. Your social media post and the past could determine your future in the United States of America. Why are we saying this? Because Trump administration has decided to suspend the processing of visas for foreign students. Embassies and consulates have been told to stop scheduling any additional student or exchange visa appointment until further orders. As per reports, Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, in an internal cable has said that his department plans to issue updated guidance on social media vetting of students. But what does social media vetting entail? Conducting a social media screening, a background check to verify your internet presence, which is like going through your Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, X and other accounts. This includes looking at your posts, groups that you're part of or you follow, your interactions. By the way, since 2019, US has been seeking details of social media accounts from most of the applicants. The question arises, why is it happening? Because Trump administration is creating yet another filter. It believes this is going to reduce the chances of people with criminal or problematic backgrounds entering America. But what kind of posts can hurt your chances of getting a US visa? The list is long. Anti-Semitic ideology, pro-Palestine content. Remember, Donald Trump has reiterated many a times that students who come to study but end up becoming a part of protest at campuses should not be welcomed. But exactly what will qualify as being objectionable hasn't been clarified yet. So should you delete your old social media posts? Well, we don't know whether that will help in any way. Not just that. In fact, simultaneously, there is a warning that has gone for foreign students studying in the United States of America. Some of the new rules that may result in students being deported are: 1. Skipping classes or dropping out of your course while on a student visa. Overstaying your visa period and engaging in unauthorized employment. Minor traffic offenses or alcohol-related incidents. These can get you deported. And even posting questionable content that may be viewed as national security threat on social media platforms. Now, what does it mean for scheduled interviews? Foreign students, how should you be looking at this situation? Well, such students do not need to worry. Only available slots right now will be pulled down. So if you still had not gotten, in fact, any kind of time for your interview, then you won't be getting it. But if you have a scheduled interview, it will happen. What does it mean for Indian students applying in 2025? Viewers, India is one of the largest sources of international students in the US, with over 2 lakh Indian nationals enrolled in American institutions as of 2024. This new move has made the cloud of uncertainty among Indian students go thicker and stormier. And that's exactly what we plan to decode for you on the News Hour Agenda this evening. Joining me on this broadcast is Lawrence H. Tribe, who is a very well-renowned professor, Harvard University. Sir, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us here on Times Now. I want to ask you, how do you view, firstly, Trump administration's decision to halt interviews for the international student visa process, this so-called visa freeze, social media vetting that's going to happen now onwards?
I think it is a terrible decision, and I don't think it will last, because it will hurt not just the students in India and around the world who would otherwise come to Harvard, make networks of connection, but it will hurt Harvard, and it will hurt the United States of America. In the 50 years that I've taught at Harvard, I've had brilliant students from around the world. Some of the most brilliant were from India. Those students come to Harvard to study medicine, to study law, to study mathematics, to study biology. Some of them end up winning Nobel Prizes. They make the United States productive, so that the political pushback against this self-inflicted wound by the Trump administration is going to be considerable once the American people, who do welcome people from abroad and welcome students, once they realize how this is a self-inflicted wound. On top of that, there's going to be a hearing in the United States District Court for Boston, the federal court in Boston, before an excellent judge, Allison Burroughs, this Thursday, a hearing on the arbitrary decision of the Trump administration to eliminate the eligibility of Harvard University to serve as a host for foreign students. That decision, which is utterly unsupported in the laws of the United States, and which the president had no authority to impose, was put on temporary hold by Judge Burroughs within 2 hours of her being asked to do so. That temporary restraining order is very likely to be turned into a permanent injunction after this Thursday's hearing. And as far as students in India and around the world who want to come here because they have concluded that of all the opportunities open to them throughout the globe, the opportunities here at Harvard or at other very prominent institutions are unique. They can learn things here and teach us in ways that would be impossible elsewhere. So the question will be, will the courts do anything about President Trump's arbitrary directive to Secretary of State Marco Rubio to put a freeze on future interviews? And the answer, I think, is yes. There is no legal basis for the president acting as though he were a monarch, or worse, a dictator, to suddenly alter the immigration laws and procedures of the United States. It is the Congress of the United States that puts in place the legal framework for visitor visas, for student visas, for immigration generally. This president has no respect for the Constitution, probably no understanding of it. He did say before he was elected president that he would be willing to terminate parts of our Constitution. But I have news for him. He won't get away with it. Courts have begun to flex their muscles, and even though they don't have an army to enforce their decisions, there is a dynamic in place that makes it exceedingly unlikely that the president will get away with becoming a total tyrant. So I would say to students, yes, take the advice that you heard on this program with respect to your social media. Be careful, but that's true around the world.
Yes.
Surveillance of social media is ubiquitous, but do not hesitate to come to the United States. You are welcome here. You have millions of friends here and only one enemy.
Well, those are very strong words you've used, and also you've given an important message as well to the students here in India specifically who have this American dream, who want to actually go to the United States of America and who want to study in the institutions there. Professor Tribe, we've also heard what Marco Rubio in fact had said earlier. He said, I don't know when we've got it in our head that a visa is some sort of a birthright. It is not. It is a visitor into our country. And if you violate the terms of your visitation, you are going to leave. Because there is a deportation drive that's also simultaneously going on. Directions have been sent to embassies and consulates. Students, foreign students specifically, have been asked to adhere to the norms, follow the rules. Some of them I read out as well. And I want to ask you a little bit about what could really be the reason behind these kind of punitive measures against the foreign students and Ivy League universities?
Well, I think the reason is envy and hatred. They envy intellect. Harvard's motto, Veritas, means truth. But to some of these people, to Donald Trump and to those around him, truth is what they want it to be. They don't recognize the reality world. They don't recognize science. Someone like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is fundamentally crazy, and yet this administration put him in charge of the Department of Health and Human Services. They hate truth, but that's true of tyrants everywhere and throughout history. Tyranny cannot tolerate challenge. It cannot tolerate freedom, the freedom of students to think and say what they want. You know, we have a First Amendment here that not even Congress can abridge the freedom of speech. And that is true also of the freedom of thought. It's true that a visa is not a birthright. It's true that it is a kind of privilege. But the United States Supreme Court has repeatedly held, even conservative justices have agreed, that privileges cannot be withheld on the basis of pressure to give up your freedom of speech. It may be a privilege, but it can't be conditioned in unconstitutional ways. So that when people come here and they are told, if you engage in even peaceful protest with a message we don't like, we will get rid of you, our courts will push back against that, because that is an abridgment of the freedom of speech. And an important point, our Bill of Rights applies to all persons in the United States, not just to citizens, not just to some class of immigrants, all persons. And that's important.
One last question before I let you go, Professor Tribe. Now, a lot has happened between Harvard and Donald Trump, in the last few weeks. I want to understand from you, how do you view the Trump administration's attempt to cancel roughly $100 million in federal contracts with Harvard? And do you believe Harvard is now at a risk of facing a serious financial crisis?
We're certainly facing financial pressure, but we are not going to cave in. For example, an attempt by a much more moderate administration with the help of Congress to cancel the contracts of 3 named individuals who gave testimony that the government didn't like. That was held by the U.S. Supreme Court in a 1946 decision called United States versus Lovett. That was held to be a prohibited bill of attainder. The kings of England, going back to the 14th century, and it reached a peak under Henry VIII in the 1500s, used to issue these edicts, these prohibitions. People who would be told they can no longer deal with the government, and in extreme cases, they were sentenced to death.
Right.
That stopped hundreds of years ago, and our Constitution forbids it because it is a way of getting around the right to a fair trial and a jury trial to decide whether what you have done violates the law. And no political branch can simply decide on its own unilaterally, because we don't agree with what you said, we claim that you are violating the law and must be deported. That is not the way the law works in this country.
All right. Professor Tribe, thank you very much for speaking with us here on Times Now and sharing with us your perspective. Let me also now